Hello, this is Stephana, and you're enjoying Stephana Speaks. I'm excited to continue my day 2 in my 30-day challenge and bring the tools that I have developed to a more broader audience through the Blog Talk Radio and through Google Hangouts, and really experiment with what I'm teaching to my clients as far as getting their communication out there and communicating their truth. One of the things that is really fun and challenging is dealing with all the technology as we go through shifting. I'm definitely more of a down-to-earth, enjoy being outside and in the earth. So this dealing with this operating system over here and then the Mac and putting all of these things together, this is really okay, I'm up to the task. This is my challenge. So I like to start every show and every session, every day with my pilot method, and that is the P is practicing presence. So in practicing presence, I encourage you to have your own unique voice of how you express or create your space of presence. For me, sometimes it is picking up my flute and just playing that, soothing because of the vibration of beauty. It's so beautiful, and it really brings that energy there. Sometimes it's just being completely silent. So for just a moment, I am definitely ready for some practicing presence. I'm feeling the carpet under my feet. I'm feeling the texture of the seat. And feeling the breath. So if you can just come to the moment with your breath, relax your shoulders, and just notice without judging. Just become aware of the breath. That's a great way to practice presence and become present to your environment right now. And that really helps lead into the next, and that's intention. So I like to set an intention. Intention's a big thing because there's a lot of affirmation. You need to set affirmations and the positive thinking and all of that. And sometimes that just really annoys me sometimes, because the fact is, if you don't have intention, you're not going to get stuff done no matter how many times you affirm it. And I mean, that's kind of me being a little snarky about things. But the truth is, it's like I intended to move across country and get out of the heat of Austin. And the next thing I knew, I was moving across country with my kids, and there wasn't affirmations, there wasn't a lot of rigmarole, there was pure intention, and that's how I got from point A to point B. And so the power of intention is great. It's, to me, almost more powerful than affirmations and positive thinking and all of those wonderful things, because I can tell you I wasn't constantly positive. The emotions happen, and if you can understand that intention, now my intention wasn't to create a bad effect on everybody around me, but or myself, but I did have an intention set, and that propelled me forward, as opposed to, well, now I am this perfect person, and I'm this and I am that. Well, maybe not. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And coming to that point of understanding that our intentions are really what cause things. That's a big piece. So intention, for you have a different intention listening to this. I have a different intention in speaking this, in being here right now. And as I set that intention and then let it go, meaning focus on now the next movement, but knowing that that intention is set, that really helps to create the day, and you can see how it builds on. One of the other things I wanted to say about the tools, the pilot pieces, practicing presence, intention, and that is that, like, especially with practicing presence, and why I say for myself even practicing presence, because it's not like a checklist that you mark off and you're done forevermore. And it's not like earning a degree and all of a sudden you are present we're human beings, so we're traveling the river of an emotional terrain. And one of the things is that we have, one of the things that we have as a gift is that our emotions actually can guide us. And instead of us being so much driven by them, we can use them as that guidance system that recognizes and can respond. And how we respond sometimes is going to be different depending on how many skills we have, what kind of tools we use. So let me move forward on this. Let's go to the next one. And L is listening. So it's not just listening with our ears. I like to listen from my heart, from my, this is more empathic listening, as well as, of course, we're using our ears, but the empathic listening is listening from the words that may be coming out of someone's mouth, even our own mouth, may just be parroting something else that has occurred in our past, or something that we have taken on that may not be a script that is really part of what we choose. Let's say, for example, we're running on an automatic pilot, and that script that's running in the background or that's running constantly is not effective for us. So coming into this place and using these tools, practicing presence, setting the intention, it's the next step. And then so listening from that place of empathic listening. We'll talk more about that another time, but let's get to laughter, because laughter is truly one of my favorite tools and principles of life. I think that when we find life so troublesome, we haven't allowed ourselves to laugh. And I see that as we journey through experiences, sometimes they're very miserable. And one of the things, and this is not being morbid, I'm not going to go and laugh at my mother's funeral, or things that are completely inappropriate, but sometimes there is that release, just like there's an appropriate time to be sad and to grieve, and the body can use tears to release that. So for me, laughter allows us to come back to the present, to our body, and to release things that are not working for us or that are tight within us. There's many different ways that laughter actually can be used as a tool. And then, of course, love. And for me, I strive for that vibration, to be love and above, and strive to look or come from that place of love, even when that's the environment or circumstances don't feel very loving. But I can come from that place of that understanding that ultimately that is the higher energy that I want to be in. And again, I'm not talking about romantic love, although that's lovely. I'm talking about that higher vibration. And in another show, I'll do something specific on that, and I'll bring out the Power versus Force book, and we can go through the different vibrational levels. It's very interesting. So O is observation. And for me, I am observing a few different things going on, so I'm not fully present. And I think you can probably get when I move in and out. For example, my mic was muted on this phone, on the other call that I'm doing at the same time when I'm recording. And so my attention was pulled into this area, and I wasn't fully present, but I also hadn't observed that it was muted. So you get the idea of what happens when, so right before that there was something else going on and I wasn't fully present. And I noticed that about myself, that when we are not fully present, it's a little bit more difficult to observe what's going on in our environment. And I have some great stories about this past summer. I've literally saved 3 people's lives from drowning this summer, all because I had been fully practicing near the swimming areas and the water areas, the practicing presence all the way to observe. And I was very observant. Had been practicing that so much. My awareness was at a level that when there was a crowd, I was the one person who could pinpoint and observe. So for me, it is a life and death difference of having that as a tool that we practice and utilize. So then the T, of course, are the tools. And Pilot, for me, is a tool that I use. Now, as I was talking about yesterday, when I originally used this Pilot method and started creating Pilot and using that term, I felt that when we have, when we're piloting, when we're flying an airplane, you have to be present before you take off. Prior to that, you have an intention, you've set your flight plan, and you're listening for different sounds, engine sounds. You're very aware and observant. And then you have tools. You have your toolbox, and you have your specific appropriate tools for this machine. For a Cessna, there are different tools. That toolbox is very different, I guarantee you, for the 747. Just like it's different for a car, or different for a buggy, or different for a computer. Now, this is where, when I coach my clients, I give them the image of their own toolbox, and they get to create what their toolbox looks like and what tools are in it. So just like if I were to grab one of my high heels, I'm just going to have that ready for you, but a high heel, and take a nail and start to put that nail in the wall with my Milanos, that would probably, well, the truth is I've done that before, for shame, but that would not be an appropriate tool, you see. And it's truly an analogy, though, of the tools that we have in our toolbox that may not be appropriate for our circumstance or our situation. And looking at that, then, what is in your toolbox? And is it time to clean out and organize that toolbox? So for me, when I do that, I have a list of, it says at the top of my notebook, it says tools and what tools I use. And I've had this type of list for years when my children were younger, so more infant, and the language barrier was a little bit difficult, so I used the tools of American Sign Language, and we had some basic tools so that we could communicate, or I could communicate, and they were able to communicate a little bit better. And there were things like, I knew if there was an emotion going on in my child, I could use tools, and I would go down a checklist. And it's really a way to get you to be more responsive as opposed to reactive. That was why I originally created it, because when you're a parent, especially a new parent, and the way I choose to parent, I'm very, very hands-on, and the experience of being a parent to young children can get very overwhelming, especially if you're not caring for yourself fully. You get overtired, you get, there's spousal issues, and there's life. And for me, I always felt like, well, if the child was getting the worst of me because I wasn't able to handle myself, well, I need to do something about this. So I created my tools list, and I posted it in a big sheet of paper on the wall. And I knew that there were different types of things, like water instantly made things better for me as well as my boys. If I just put out a bowl of water, or a little tub of water, and then a tub of something else, they could play in that, and it diffused bickering that was going on, pulling on toys, and upsetness. And other tools, hunger. Kids don't realize sometimes when they're hungry. Adults don't sometimes also. And then what kind of food we put in. So that's also a tool. And the list of tools is tailor-made for you. That's something you want to develop and you can create. Now, a coach can certainly help you with that, somebody who's got the experience, and that's what I do. But for you to be responsible for those tools is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. It's a gift, truly, to create a toolbox for yourself that allows you to come from a place of responsiveness as opposed to reaction. Because if you're looking around for a hammer and you don't have a hammer, you're going to find whatever tool you can pick up or whatever thing that may substitute for that hammer, and you're going to start hammering away. And it may damage the heel. Yeah. It may not get the job done properly. You may accidentally hit your finger. You see what I'm getting at? So using the appropriate tools. And that's the message that I wanted to talk about today. The tools are really wonderful types of bringing and enhancing your life, and that's what it should be. So we talked about money yesterday, and for me, money is actually part of and is a tool. I use other types of things as well to look at the concept of the tool, like the character and building that out as a character. Now, I can tell you, when we're talking about time today, now time can be a tool and it can also be a character in your play, but I'm going to talk about it as a tool today. So let's look at time as a tool and how we can utilize it. I want to bring up this concept of Einstein time. So we know that prior to that, the Newton law was that time was absolute. We only had 24 hours in a day. We had 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and if you used up that time, it was used up, it was gone forever, and that's all you have, and that's all anybody has. And you know, I used to live my life by that. I had every 168 hours a week mapped out by the minute. And sometimes I go back to my default using that tool of the checklist of the time. It's kind of like a little safety net, but it's interesting how old tools can be ingrained and you go back to them as a way to, you know, quite frankly, it's a bit of an escape to see. And I just wrote an article on this, resistance to change. So resistance to change is a big piece of how we go through things and process things. So let me get back to it. So time, from the Newton viewpoint, is that it's absolute. And you can really operate in that way, but it's very stressful and it's very rigid. Now let's swing over to Einstein time and talk about how everything's relative, right? So he was talking about how when you're in love and you're with your love and you're looking in their eyes, an hour can seem like a minute. And when you are cleaning the toilets and doing something you absolutely hate, like yesterday I was doing, and I thought, this is so interesting. Here I am, this 30 minutes that I'm focusing on cleaning right now is really dragging on, my goodness. And that's really how the time concept is relative. So I'm giving this conceptually. I'm going to give another piece around this of time, and that's this story that I read about a woman who, I think she was in Toronto, and the Pope was coming to visit, and she was just in a hullabaloo, and she said, I've got to get a photograph of it. This is the most important thing. And so she's getting everything ready. She's getting her light kit and everything set up, and she's futzing around with her camera and getting it and looking through a camera, and she gets one picture of him as he's walking by and gone. She didn't see him with her own eyes. She wasn't there fully with her own experience, so she didn't actually even experience seeing the Pope. And she got one hazy photograph of it. And that's another type of experience of time that we're not fully present. So bringing that around to a picture of how time can be expressed for us as individuals. Another example is, when I'm on a film set doing what I love, 16 hours can go by in a snap, and I'll have no idea where the time has gone, because I've been so fully present and so in the moment, creating the character and enjoying every moment. It was like a flash, but I was experiencing every moment of it. And it's just like a beautiful, such a difference, such an experience of joy to be fully present in time. And so I got to practicing how time, and using this concept of Einstein time, which really, let's look at the reality. Einstein was, this is the quantum reality we're talking about. This is how the presence, being fully present and practicing that presence, really substantiates this concept around time and it being relative, because we can be fully present and experience an expansive amount of time, or we can experience a contracted amount of time. And notice also, expansive doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. So the label that we put on it or define how we are spending our time, good or bad, is just a label. But when we feel contracted in the experience and not fully present, that experience of time, the perception is that it's lasting forever, And this is something that I encourage you to experiment for yourself and really come to, especially if you've had, like me, the real practice of everything being absolute. That's almost ingrained in me. And so I'll hit up against that as I'm changing my reality. As my reality and my understanding starts to change more and more, I hit up against that resistance of time is absolute. We must get out the door right now, and if we don't, we won't make we won't make the lights, and we won't make, and that is you can notice how dense that is and how contracted that is. And that is the experience of time in a way that is, for me, is ineffective, and it leads to a life that is not full of joy. So I'm looking at the bigger picture and how I can bring my tools in, specifically the use of time as a tool, to enhance or to improve or to maintain or help maintain my experience of the life that I intend for me. And as I say me and I, then you, of course, would say to your own world, what is it for me? What is it that I am intending? And see how you can utilize time for you. It's just a fascinating concept in itself. I think I was going to share one other story about time. And what's very interesting is that time is not, in fact, linear. Whereas we can string up time on let's say it's a ticker tape parade, or, we have way back there in my childhood, which is over now and long gone. It's gone by, and now the time has progressed. And the thing about time, though, is that it's also all right here, all happening simultaneously. Now that's a tough one to get your mind around sometimes. Even sometimes I'll just sit and ponder that. But it is really an understanding of how, and a lot of the work that I do with my clients is inner child work. Because that inner child that seems like it's back 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever, is actually right here. And so the time feels like it should be somewhere else, but it's actually right here, collapsed on top of or around our presence, our presence. And so as I had been practicing to, how do I gain more insight around this? How do I gain more control over that so that I'm not the effect of that time collapsing on me? My trauma from a childhood experience, from those experiences, how do I help others who've had trauma in their past and it keeps coming up now and collapsing on their present? Well, definitely it's part of the practicing presence, because when you're practicing presence, you're not only doing it physically, you're doing it emotionally and mentally, and it is an awareness to come back to your breath and know that the judge, jury, and convictor right here, and the time monster that comes in and brings everything right now, and the noise of you're a bad child, or this is what's going to happen, and the fear, and all of those can just go whoosh, because you're here in the moment with the breath. And it takes some of that pressure off so that then you can come to the moment of intention, listening, lightening up a little bit here with laughter and loving, and then starting that process, continuing, and then observing. Oh, that's what that is. Oh, I recognize that. That's what happened when I was 4 years old, and I'm not 4 years old anymore, but I see that fear. And and there it is right there in my body. Oh, that pressure. Oh, wow. And you start to observe that pain and that wanting to hide, or that wanting to escape it. And you can feel it, and I can feel it right here as I'm talking about this. And we can, there it is in my gut. And that's the deeper level as we go through this spiral of life and using the tools that have really come to work very well for me and my clients. So observing that without the judgment, so that then we can step into, okay, well, what's the proper tool? Sometimes emotional freedom technique, a tapping technique, is a great tool. Sometimes it's the most annoying tool and ineffective and cumbersome. Sometimes a tool like NLP that I use a lot is a great tool, and sometimes it's just absolutely frustrating. So it's not for the right time, and sometimes going and getting a big glass of water, sometimes taking a walk on the beach, sometimes going and taking a shower, sometimes jumping up and down, sometimes just doing laughter yoga, sometimes doing qigong. So those are the tools. And to be able to respond and know that there is an appropriate tool is for the experience, or for the situation, for the circumstance. There is a proper tool, or an appropriate tool for you. No one else is going to tell you what's proper or appropriate. I can tell you this after 20 plus years counseling and working and following a strict dogmatic plan of counseling. No one else can tell you what your next step is or what your checklist is. I don't care how highly trained they are. You must come to a place where you are piloting your own life, where you are stepping into the seat. Look, I'm getting so intense. That you are stepping into your pilot's seat, okay? So you're the one that's pulling on that throttle and looking at the gauges and monitoring the gauges and monitoring how you're doing. And you're the one that's going to pull and lift off when you are ready, okay? So as a coach, I bring the guidance in a way like a flight instructor would, and encouragement. And as a consultant, I also bring extra tools that you may not have heard of to help build those skills. I'm Stephana Johnson, and I hope that something has resonated with you. It's my intention for you to experience all that you are here to experience, and to sing your soul song. Because when you do, someone will listen, and it will be exactly the right person and energy that needs that in that moment. Peace and blessings. I wanted to put a logo up here for you really quickly, and I didn't do it. So I'm going to end with, once again, my website, stephanajohnson.com. And you can also find me at Facebook at Stephana Speaks. So facebook.com/Stephana Speaks. I'm going to post all my shows right there. And I love any questions if you have any. So you can always send them to me, and we'll take it on from there. Have a fabulous day.